Perhaps you referred to the imminent attack on your rebel fleet. Yeah, I assure you, we are quite safe from your friends here. Everything that has transpired has done so according to my design.
Problems, lies, sex, and fails. Song of the South. This movie was made in 1946, and it's a very controversial film. It's been pretty much buried by Disney for quite some time. As you can see here, some critics have described this film's portrayal of African Americans as racist and offensive, maintaining that the black vernacular and other qualities are stereotypes. It's obviously on a plantation, and they paint it as if everything's joyous and zippity-doo-dah and great. Blacks had a great time on the plantation. That's how they paint this film. It's been buried for a long time. It's naturally not on the Disney Plus app. Now, some could argue, well, why would they put it on there if it has all these problems? Well, first of all, you should never mess with history. Even if you made a huge mistake, you need to own up to what you did, whether it's old war references, racism, sexism, murder, whatever it may be. It is important for the future of humanity that we always remember and that we always see what we did wrong, or right for that matter. So just from a historical standpoint, you should never hide anything. That should never happen. Not from history books, not from museums, and certainly not from Disney Plus. They need to own up to what it is. It was a different time. This also causes the problem that a lot of us know about this film, and by you not putting it on Disney Plus and you're hiding it, well, you're just making more people talk about it. Let's take a quick look at Song of the South. Most of you are going to recognize it by the Zippity-Doo-Dah song. It did have some innovation in that this was a live action and cartoon put together. See, here's the little birdies on his finger. It was really well done, especially for the time. It was a very impressive film. Unfortunately, it just has a lot of racist type references and remarks, and it's just very clear when you watch the film. This is pretty neat. The dog sees the cartoon butterfly. If you look on the right side, you're going to see the token black boy. It's all joyous, the slave boy. It's all joyous and living life with the young white kids, their masters. Everything's great. I'm just doing cartwheels along with the white kids. This is a classic. It does have racial issues. Again, you need to own up, Disney, to the things that you did. It's a part of history. Owning up to something and just saying, we're sorry, it was a different time. We wanted to maintain the vault and the history of what's going on. I think that most people would have been like, okay, you did the right thing. Because you should have all these films, especially when you're advertising, open the vault. Here you're going to see, obviously, the black slave cook. Wait and see. They paint it. She's happy and singing and cooking, but what they're not showing you is this is a huge cottage house, and she's obviously working in the kitchen. So this is the main character, Uncle Remus. They make it as if, the kids are endeared to him, so he's uncle. I personally find the name very suspect. Basically, he's an Uncle Tom, is what they're implying.
Just ain't got the ears tuned for listening.
He also tells a lot of stories, and the stories relate to the cartoon characters. They very much paint him as if he's an out-of-touch black man. There's a scene where the mother says, you can't tell these stories anymore because you're confusing my boy and this and that. It's very much implied that he's living in a fantasy land telling the kids about these stories. The kids see the cartoon. They're painting him as, well, he's pretty cuckoo because he's seeing and talking to these animals. The next major point here, every animal is black, literally painting all animals and beasts as being African American, for that matter, slaves of this era. If you really listen to how the rabbit speaks, the frog speaks.
Why don't you sit down and calm yourself?
Well, the grasshopper jump, so did the flea.
Listen to this interaction between the frog and the rabbit.
Why not, Brer Rabbit? Better mend your ways. You's heading for trouble one of these days.
Much all the creatures in this film are portrayed as basically black slaves of that era. So a lot of people have issue with this movie. I can't agree enough, but I think that it's important that they show history and own up to what they did. The main actor is James Baskett. He was given an honorary Academy Award, making him the first black male performer to receive an Oscar. Not only is Disney denying their past, this is important, especially to African Americans. This is an important piece of film history history and their culture, and it's just not really right that Disney has totally removed the film, so they really need to bring it back. There's a ton of classic Disney stuff like that. Literally just racism all over the place. They had propaganda films. They had the Minotaur type characters in Fantasia. Most of you will know it as Fantasia. Lady and the Tramp. There's the twin Siamese cats. They are called Sai and Am. And Siam is now Thailand. The way their eyes are slanted, the way they talk, it's just blatant stereotypes. And Disney has a ton of this stuff. It's not anything new.
Do you seeing that thing swimming round and round? Yes. Maybe we could reaching in and make it drop.
The Black Crows. These are from Dumbo. This is being rumored is going to be removed from Dumbo. Already there, it's part of the history, and Disney just own up to it. Hiding this stuff is only going to make it worse. They're making a lot of edits is one of the points here. They're really changing a lot of content, historical content, to their benefit, to look good. Incidentally, this is like the leader of the crows. He's the one that smokes the cigar. He does the most talking. His name is Jim Crow. Okay, so these aren't accidents. This isn't just like, oh, well, we happen to find voices for these guys and they fit. They were deliberately doing these types of things.
Yeah, I see the house now. Yeah, I seen all that too. And I suppose you and no elephant ate up in no tree either.
Disney has a long history of literally racist content. You have to be a little bit older to remember it or to know about it, but it's there. I personally think that it's wrong and foolish that they want to edit this stuff and change it and hide it. It's obviously not wise for them to broadcast it and say, hey, look, a song of the South, but they shouldn't be hiding it because they should know that people are going to be digging for this stuff. By it not being there, it just doesn't make you look good, Disney. Some other edits they've made is there's a show, Gravity Falls. The main character, Stan, as you can see, he has kind of a Pac-Man. It kind of looks like the Goldfish snacks. Here, Disney is editing it, and now it's just plain. This is a Disney edit. Mickey loves sex. Here's an article, sexual innuendos in Disney movies. Entangled, there's the word sex here in the hair. The Lion King, this one's really well known, that in the dust that he kicks up, it says sex. Now, Disney claims that this is SFX for special effects. If you really look at it, that's an E. It says sex. Furthermore, they have edited this so it doesn't swirl around and do this anymore. So if it says SFX, why are you hiding it? Because you know that it says sex. Now this is hard to see, and if you go watch Lion King right now, you're going to see the swirl is different. It doesn't show this anymore. Here's a little video. You could see them side by side, and here you can clearly see it says sex. Okay, from 95 the tape, and now here they've changed the swirl of this. If you have nothing to hide, why are you changing this? I know what a lot of people are thinking right now. It's like when you look at clouds, you see things that you think you see or that you want to see, and I'm not arguing that. There's a lot of like mind and image games that you look at them and one person sees a butterfly, another person sees a boat. The problem becomes when it's not just 1 or 3 or 5 references, when it's time and time again, generation after generation. When you see these types of things, it becomes very apparent, and Disney knows what they're doing. These aren't amateur artists that don't know what they're drawing, okay? And here it is in steps. You can see it a little bit better, and it clearly spells sex. Here, you can see his knees. It looks in the scene that he gets an erection, but they say that it's his knees, and I'm not arguing that, but the problem here is, again, if this was the only reference, you would say, oh, it's just his knee, you're being silly. But when you see dozens over decades of references like this, literal sexual connotations and innuendo, they know what they're doing. They know how they're drawing these cartoons. There's no reason to make his knee poke out here. Artists, comic book artists, cartoonists, they're known to put in little gags. They're known to have a certain type of mind. They like to have fun. Don't think that they made the mistake, oh, well, we just bent his knee. They know what they're doing. Is it his knees? I'm not arguing that. In the timing, the moment, and that's all you see. Furthermore, it's not both knees. You just see this poke out, and when it's the 80th reference you're seeing of sexual innuendo, it's not a mistake. Here's the front cover of The Lion King, and again, people will say, well, you're just seeing what you want to see, like the clouds. This isn't an accident. Where's the little nostril holes? Where's the whiskers? I mean, they could have really distinguished this. They know what they're doing. That's an accident? Come on, guys. This is The Little Mermaid, which has quite a few sexual references in it. I mean, you can't deny that that's a big old dildo. It doesn't look like anything else. There's no reason for that pipe or section or whatever to look that way. It's blatant. It's just that it happens so fast and they're hidden in things that you don't notice them. You don't see them, but they're putting of them there. Jessica Rabbit. There's a scene where they crash and she goes flying off the car. And right here you can see. Later, they went back and added some underwear. This is Disney. Cute jokes and comments that they make throughout these cartoons. Here he says, "Nobody takes my wife's mouth except me." And you know, you're thinking about it innocently. Well, it's Mr. Potato Head, of course. Nobody takes her mouth. But that could have been worded 1,000 different ways. Furthermore, they could have just left that out. Why do they have to put that in? Why? Because they know what they're doing. They're making innuendo. There's all kinds of little jokes and Ratatouille, all kinds of references. He's mentioning, "I have this tiny," and she looks right down at his crotch. These aren't accidents. They know what they're doing. These guys are drawing these cartoons and writing the scripts. They're not accidents. Here's an old Mickey and Minnie. These guys know what they're drawing. That's definitely not her chest. There's even some images of her shirtless and she has no chest. So we know that it's definitely not that. They know what they're doing. They could have changed the shape, the width. Look at how Minnie's hand is holding it. I mean, it's just so blatant that this is a big old dildo and they're putting it right in front of you. And if this was the only thing that we ever caught of Disney, you could say, okay, your eyes are playing tricks on you. You're seeing faces in the cloud. There's hundreds of these things throughout Disney movies and cartoons and comics. These aren't coincidences. Disney is known for this, and I'm going to show you. The Rescuers, 1977. Now, this happened so fast that probably most of you have never even thought of this or seen this. So take a look. You're going to see that they go off a building and the bird is dive bombing. And then they comes to a point where you're going to see they pass a sign that says towers, and then they start to level off. And as they level off, you're going to see a picture in one of the windows. It's so fast, you may not even catch it. Take a look. Did you see it? And again, it happened so fast that most people throughout history never even thought about it, or it would never occur to you that Disney's putting naked women in their cartoons. Now bear with me, it's hard to catch it because it just happens so fast, but roughly around the 19 seconds of this particular clip. You see here towers, it comes up shortly after the sign. Did you see it? It's very hard to catch it. It comes up after this tower sign. You see here, 19 seconds of this clip. This isn't Photoshop. This isn't added by somebody. This is Disney. It's very obvious that is a female and there are her breasts. She's buck naked, wide open arms, showing you her tits and showing your 3-year-old, your 9-year-old, and everyone else her tits. This is the Disney that you may not know or that they want to hide and they don't talk about. This will probably be also edited out. So you might say, oh, but that's one little thing, or somebody added that, or that was just, one of the cartoonists.
What's been so upsetting today as parents learn this news is their concern that this security guard was working in areas where he would have been around many children. 46-year-old Thomas Wheeler is a retired Air Force Master Sergeant who works as a security guard at Disney's Animal Kingdom. Tuesday, he was arrested on charges of trading and downloading child pornography.
The Disney World employee is behind bars in Orange County.
He is accused of possessing child pornography. Detectives say that their investigation into Charles Proctor even stretched to Washington State. This arrest affidavit recounts the horrifying images Charles Proctor is accused of having on his computer. This morning, he's being held here at the jail without bond. Go ahead and take a look at Charles Proctor. He's a 56-year-old electrician at Disney World. Proctor is charged with 11 counts of possessing child porn. Deputies arrested him yesterday at his Orlando home. They say he communicated online with a man in Washington, encouraging him to have sex with his girlfriend's 12-year-old daughter. Detectives say he kept pornographic images of children as young as 3 years old on his computer. And they say he pretended to be a 16-year-old girl when he engaged in sexually explicit online conversations. Deputies say he logged onto his email account from work. The arrest affidavit says detectives found an IP address that was used to access the account from Walt Disney World.
2014.
Disney World saw its darkest day yet as dozens of employees were arrested in connection with a child sexting operation. At least 35 theme park employees are accused of possessing child porn or attempting to meet minors for sex since 2006 in and around Florida. So far, 32 have been convicted. Detectives posed as children or parents of children in online chat forums and waited for the men to solicit them for sex and arranged to meet.
2014.
More than a dozen men, including Disney employees, are facing jail time after they're caught in an undercover sex bust. Investigators in Florida say the men wanted to have sex with the underage boys and girls who they met on social media sites. One of the suspects is a teacher and several others work at Disney and/or Universal. The teacher faces 50 counts of possession of child porn.
2017. Disney executive charged with felony child sex abuse. 2018.
A 10 News alert right now out of Polk County. Detectives arrested 10 men and a 16-year-old boy as part of an undercover child pornography investigation. One of the men worked as a project manager at Walt Disney World. Another worked at Legoland. Operation Guardians of Innocence 2 said the men were involved in the possession, promotion, and distribution of child porn. In total, the suspects face 660 felony charges, among other charges.
2019. Former Walt Disney Vice President sentenced in child sex abuse investigation.
We'll start with Jonathan McGrew. Jonathan works for Disney. He's a custodian. He works at Hollywood Studios. And he dates Savannah Lawrence. Guess what? She's a custodian. She works for Disney Hollywood Studios. So this pair showed up thinking that they would have a threesome with a 13-year-old little girl. The suspect sent videos of he and Savannah having sex to what he thought was a 13-year-old child. In fact, he said to the child, "We want to enjoy this opportunity. We don't want to rush. And then at the conclusion, maybe even we'll cuddle a little bit." He went on to say that our fantasy is to play stepdad, stepdaughter, stepmom, teacher, student, maybe even shoplifter, where we do a strip search. So he gave all of these details before the two of them showed up. Well, guess what? Savannah said, "I'm just a follower," but she admitted and confessed that they came there to engage a child. Well, if that's not enough, Disney employees, how about another one? This one is a lifeguard at Disney Animal Kingdom Lodge. Kenneth Aquino, he's 26. He left his girlfriend, who was 7 months pregnant with his child, in order to go have sex with a child, a 13-year-old. He bragged about his prowess and how wonderful he was. He's a Navy veteran. That's right, he was working toward a dive team or a SEAL team or some kind of special ops job. They did a background on him and found out that he had friends or affiliates that were gang members, and they tossed him. But that didn't stop him from showing up in his work clothes from Disney in order to have sex. The next guy that I'm going to introduce you to, as he's grooming this child, makes the statement, "We want to cuddle with Pikachu and have sex in the back of the car." Did you hear what I said? Who's our guy who wants to cuddle with Pikachu and have sex with children? Theodore E. Jones, 28 years of age. He's a chef at the hangar in Disney Springs, and he had old Pikachu in the car. He wanted to tell this, what he thought was a 13-year-old child, a little girl, that he wanted to have sex with her for the first time. And that when they finished, he wanted to keep her panties. We had to rescue Pikachu from that nasty environment. But more importantly, we had to find children who he was seeking. And he was seeking them once again on social media sites. He was using his computer. He was transmitting nude photographs of himself to what he believed to be a 13-year-old child. He said very nasty things to this 13-year-old child to go along with the very ugly, vile, nude photographs that he sent. Then there's Xavier Jackson. He's 27. He thought he was chatting with a 14-year-old, and he sent photos of himself doing things that's totally inappropriate. He was charged with 3 counts of harmful material and 1 count of unlawful communication. Oh, did I mention that he just happens to be a lifeguard at the Polynesian Resort for Disney? You think there's a few children around there? These guys weren't predators, but they all have something in common with the last arrest. They work for Disney. So you have Wilkeson Fidel. He's 24. He lives in Orlando. He thought he was coming for sex. He's been a Disney employee for 4 years, and he works at the Cosmic Restaurant in Tomorrowland. Except now he is in the county jail if he hasn't made bond yet. And then there's Shahab Malav. He's 27. He's a software developer for Disney. He's worried because he's here on a work visa from India. He thought he was coming to have sex with 2 ladies. Surprise, once again, undercover detectives. Then there's Ralph Leese. He's 45. He lives in Winter Garden. He's an IT employee for Disney. He's been there about 4 years, and he's married. So I'm sure Disney's not pleased. I bet his wife's not pleased, but we're pleased that we arrested him. This is Guillermo Perez. He's 57. Now, where would we be with an undercover operation and no Disney employees? Oh yes, we always have Disney employees. He's a bellhop at the Coronado Springs Resort on Disney. He's from Winter Garden. He confessed and he said, "You caught me." Well, he wasn't by himself. This guy is a independent photographer. He does not work for Disney, but he's contracted by Disney. He came there not to take photographs, but to engage a lady of the evening. But he's a nice guy. He brought sour Skittles for the undercover.
Back in the 40s and 60s, they didn't have the internet. Child abuse wasn't even talked about or enforced or bothered with. People wouldn't even believe you. Women getting raped or beaten, children being molested and touched. Nobody would even believe that stuff. Never mind talk about it, report it, have proof, have the internet to spread it. So a lot of this has been going on. This isn't anything new, but now they're getting caught. What effect does that all have? Well, I don't think I have to spell it out for a lot of you, but obviously your children are watching this. I and many of you grew up with this stuff, and half of you maybe didn't even know. Disney has this stuff buried all throughout their content. And naturally, this affects children. This affects society, and probably none more than the very child stars that Disney had working for them. This is just a list of 10, but there's many Disney-related child stars that have gotten into trouble or acting crazy. Macaulay Culkin, just weird behavior. A child. Shia LaBeouf. We all know all the trouble and mess he's made. The Biebs. How many times has he been arrested? Gotten in trouble? Been in the news? Look at this guy. Robbing pizzas, shops. And this one, do you remember this little kid? Would you imagine in 1,000 years that this kid is going to be getting in trouble, going to jail? How many of you remember this kid? I don't remember his name, and I'm not judging. I don't care if you've got tattoos or piercings or what you do, but it just goes to show when you work in a place that is overworking you and putting all these pressures on you as a child, and then on top of that, all this sexual innuendo everywhere, and they're having you do weird things like looking at adults' feet. This is what you get. How about this one? Do we remember this little freckled girl? She doesn't even look like this anymore. It's all plastic surgery. It looks completely different. And how many people remember all the scandalous things she's been in and jail? Do you remember this girl? What a shame. So pretty. Could sing. Could act. But this is what Disney does to you. Between all the messages and manipulation, you grow up jaded. What about Britney Spears? Or anybody remember that she shaved her head and freaked out? How about Miley Cyrus? Anybody remember Hannah Montana? She was all cute, a little country singer girl, wholesome little apple pie girl. Anybody remember her? Do you remember this girl? Is this what a lady does? Is this a girl that has confidence in herself? Is this what she does? I've got no problem with this. If you're my girlfriend, we're in private. But this is, I don't know, I guess an Instagram picture, and you're showing the world that you got your hands down this guy. Oh, but he's so hot. Look at him. This is how a lady behaves? Again, I don't mean to judge anyone, but is this what you want your daughter, your sister, your mother to be doing? I don't think so. I think that most of you aren't really okay with this, at least not out in public. And this is, again, maybe Instagram. It's their account. They can do whatever they want. I'm not trying to censor them, control them, but is this what a stable, confident, self-aware, self-respecting woman does? I'm sure that most guys will agree with me. I want a Jedi in the streets and a Sith in the sheets, but I don't want this. And this is a Disney girl. This is Hannah Montana. Back in those days especially, you're talking about I think 1923 Disney was founded. Disney ran everything. It wasn't that he had a board and partners, and I'm not saying that no one had influence or a say, but Disney made the decisions. Disney ran the company. Everything went through Walt. He did the voice of Mickey, he acted, he was involved in the building of the parks, the cartoons, everything went through Walt. So it's not even like the artists are sneaking things in or the other people were working on projects and he doesn't know. Everything went through Walt. That happens even now. I'm sure Bill Gates sees at least most things and approves them. Steve Jobs, I'm sure in his day did as well. Elon Musk, they're going to run things by these guys. They don't just like, here, we made a ship on the side. No, it's, they know what's going on. Especially back then, Walt was in control of it all. And it all went through him. He knew damn well what was being put out. All the sex and races and everything that I've shown you, Walt was very aware of. Walt was also a 33-degree Mason, Freemason. Yes, that is him. That is indeed him. If you want to take the time and look online, not just here, but just look, you'll find images of him. He was a Freemason. There's not denying that. Disney in his Demalloy uniform. Disney was trained as a boy and man on the tenets of Masonry in the Order of Demalloy, an international organization headed by the Freemasons for young men ages 12 to 21. The Order of Demalloy derives its name from Jacques Demalloy, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar. Yes, they do groom children. And yes, Freemasons and Illuminati, they are a big part of how people get stardom because You do things for them publicly and they make you famous. Miley Cyrus acting crazy, Lindsay Lohan, Walt Disney. You see, the people that indoctrinated him wanted him to do these things. In a way, I almost feel sorry for him because from a young age, they were putting this stuff in his head and controlling him. But know that part of why Walt Disney is what it is, Disney World, Disneyland, Bambi, Dumbo, all these movies and money, is because he was doing the deeds to be elevated. He didn't make it on his own. He didn't just get there. He's a Freemason, or was. Demalloy International, Walt Disney, that is him. Sponsored by Masonic Stamp Club of New York. And here you see the Freemason symbol.
It's also known that Walt Disney himself was a 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite.
Disneyland Masonic Club, also known as the 33 Club, an exclusive club. It costs about $11,000 a year in fees. Here's some of the decorations. This is something that you can't even get into. Somebody snuck and got pictures because you can't even get into this club unless you're an exclusive member. Again, the Freemason, the 33, the checkered, the dark and light, the 33 on the plates, the 33 degree Masons. If you've studied it all or seen it all, Freemasonry, they do this a lot. This is a totally Freemason thing, is the checkered black and white floors. Gravity Falls. This is what it would originally look like. You see how it's a crescent moon? And then they change it to that kind of Pac-Man or goldfish. And then now they're omitting it entirely. By the way, if you add an A here, who does Stan become? See the fez? There's an example of a fez that he's wearing. These are scenes from the cartoon, and you can see the triangle with the eye, the old seeing and knowing eye. There's a bunch of references. See how it's more of a crescent moon? And here on the floor, the pyramid with the all-seeing eye. The owl. If you know anything about Freemasons, they very much worship the owl. Here outside the shack, the pyramid with the eye. Okay, this is a Freemason lodge here with the eye, the owl. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. See the owls? See all the owls? Owls on the staircases, owls above the doorway arches, right above Snow White, the owl looking over her. Do you really think this is an accident? They're like, oh, we just like owls and we're just going to throw them in. After all I've shown you, you think this is an accident? It's very blatant. It's very obvious of what Disney has done and what they do. This is the cat from Cinderella. That cat is named Lucifer. You think that's an accident? Be honest. Lucifer, calling the cat Lucifer is an accident? The castle. And you can see tons of videos and pictures about all this stuff, but even the castle. There's all kinds of symbolism through here. Look, there's the pyramid in the eye. Okay, and there's I'm not going to get into all the castle, but there's plenty of references to this you can find on the internet, even in books. And there's tons of symbolism throughout this castle. Tons of symbology throughout Disney properties, their parks, their comics, their cartoons, their music, their movies. It's not accident. If I showed you 3 things and I said, oh, it's a conspiracy, okay, call me crazy. But I've shown you how many things, and I'm only scraping the surface.
If this castle looks familiar, it should. Disney chose this particular structure not only for its aesthetic beauty, but also for its history. Built and occupied by Mad King Ludwig, who was a member of the Bavarian Illuminati, was used in many works of Disney as representing Prince Charming and other figures of royalty.
This is Walt Disney with Werner von Braun. Werner von Braun was a Nazi. He was a German rocket specialist, and he built V-1 and V-2 rockets. His rockets are what were the foundation of not only intercontinental missiles, that's what he was working on with the V-2s, is trying to build for the Nazis intercontinental missiles and rockets like the Apollo missions that quote unquote went to space. Werner von Braun. You can look for Operation Paperclip. There's tons of references of this in books all over the internet, and you can just come to Wiki. Operation Paperclip was a secret program of the Joint Intelligence and Objectives Agency, JIOA, largely carried out by special agents of Army CIC, in which more than 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians such as Werner von Braun and his V-2 rocket team were taken from Germany to US for US government employment, primarily between 1945 and 1959. Many were former members and some were former leaders of the Nazi Party. I'm not making things up. This is a fact. Major awards of the United States. NASA Distinguished Service Medal is the highest award which may be bestowed by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA. After more than 2 decades of service and leadership in NASA, 4 Operation Paperclip members were awarded the NASA Distinguished Service Medal in 1969. Kurt Debus, Eberhard Rees, Arthur Rudolph, and Werner von Braun. Von Braun was the main rocket developer for the Nazis, and they brought him over to the US to make us rockets. He is also one of the co-founders of NASA. This is true history, guys. They brought Nazis over, and that's what's your space program. Nazis and Disney. And I know some of you are saying, okay, now you're going too far. Disney, a Nazi. Well, I'm not saying he was a Nazi, but he certainly was involved with them. You can see the all-seeing eye. And do you happen to recognize this duck who has a swastika on his hat and is Heiling Hitler? This is Disney. I didn't Photoshop this. I didn't draw this. This is Disney. This is their propaganda. You recognize these dogs? And they're looking at war films. They know what they're drawing. These aren't accidents. Oh, we just put a bunch of spots on the dog. No, they know exactly where those spots are. And at every frame that they draw the dogs, the spots are consistent. Horseshoe. And you really think that it's an accident? There's a swastika on the back of this Dalmatian? It's not an accident. Not when you're hand drawing stuff and you're with purpose putting spots in place. You see that he was mingling with Nazis. Well, what does he have to do with space? Some of you may recall that in 2006, and this article is from NASA.gov, not some conspiracy site. This is NASA's own website, JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory. This is the official NASA site. August 24th, 2006. Honey, I shrunk the solar system. If you woke up Thursday morning and sensed something was different about the world around you, you're absolutely right. Pluto is no longer a planet. Oh wow, look at that. This is when NASA and the science community and space community demoted Pluto from a planet to now a dwarf planet. Okay, NASA.gov. This isn't conspiracy, this is reality. Color image of Pluto. This is even more current. December 31st, 2015. Do you guys remember what Pluto looks like? Maybe some of you have never seen it or recall. This is the planet, or used to be planet, now dwarf planet, Pluto. Do you recognize this planet? Is there anything that stands out about this planet? Again, JPL, this is NASA. You can look this up. I'm not making this up. This isn't a fake website or Photoshop. This is NASA photos. Pluto nearly fills the frame in this image from NASA's New Horizons, taken on July 13, 2015. Last and most detailed image sent to Earth before the spacecraft's closest approach to Pluto on July 14th. Pluto was, quote unquote, the last planet that any of our spacecraft has been close to. NASA even claims that we've been to all the planets now, and that Pluto was the last frontier. Not all of them in the galaxy or universe, but in our solar system. Pluto was apparently the last one, and New Horizons was a ship that supposedly went out there, and those are the images. This is Pluto from NASA. Do you see it? Do you see what they're selling you? Disney and NASA and the Nazis? Do you see why Pluto was demoted from a planet? Do you see it now? Do you know now why Disney called it Pluto and the connection with NASA and the Nazis and why it was demoted? It wasn't demoted because they discovered it's not a real planet. It's because technology's caught up and there's the internet and there's cameras that can zoom in and there's supposed to be 22,000 satellites in the sky, so there better be pictures of all the planets, and now they can't fake it anymore. They can't lie because people are wiser and information is being shared. And now we can analyze and look back at things in slow motion and deeply look at pictures. So there's your Pluto, made by Disney. So Walt was a very intelligent and well-connected man, and he knew what he was doing. None of this is accident, especially not when it's reference after reference. He was smart enough even to create his own sovereign state. In 1965, Walt Disney began buying land for a new theme park in Florida. The success of Disneyland, which is California, smaller, subsequent sprawl of trashy businesses around it, made Disney aware of the potential for a second park on the East Coast, and fueled his desire to control a larger area of land. He got his wish in Central Florida, which was hardly developed in the mid-60s, mostly consisting of swampland and orange groves. Disney, with help from lawyers who were unaware of who their client was, and shell companies, was able to acquire the 27,000 acres that make up Disney World, the bigger one in Florida, for only $5 million. Can you imagine? It's a lot of money. I mean, obviously in 1965, but when you look at the scale, $5 million, it was nothing. Can you imagine the worth of a bargain even in 1965? Once the land was secured, the campaign for total control over the area began. This is popular mechanics, not just, Joe Blow. Disney petitioned the Florida legislature for a special district that would allow the corporation control over sewage, roads, building permits, and many other facets of municipal control in the area. They got it, and in 1967, the Reedy Creek Improvement District was created. 2 municipalities inside of it, Bay Lake and Lake Buena Vista, give the corporation an unprecedented level of control. Only landowners in the district can vote on governance for the district, thus giving Disney the upper hand in decision-making. The power is granted as far-reaching, for example. Disney can issue their own liquor licenses to themselves. They do not use surrounding counties' infrastructure. Instead, they have their own water, fire department, transportation, and emergency services. They took complete control over an area that is as big as San Francisco. They also don't pay taxes and stuff like that. It's a sovereign state.
Any person required under this chapter to collect, account for, and pay any tax imposed by this chapter who willfully fails to collect or truthfully account for, pays over such tax, or who willfully attempts in such manner to evade or defeat any tax imposed by this chapter or payment thereof, shall be guilty of a felony to a third degree. So what are we talking about here? Look, if you're somebody who has to collect a tax, i.e. a government, i.e. Reedy Creek, and you did not do that, Bob Iger keeps saying that, well, Reedy Creek is Disney and Disney is Reedy Creek. He said it over and over and over again. If that's true, then those bonds, remember the $1 billion of bonds they issued, billions of dollars of bonds? Yeah, they would need to pay taxes on those. Those would actually be taxable bonds, not tax-free bonds. So they would owe back taxes on those bonds. And if they knew that this entire time, then they should have been collecting that. That's a big one. That's a huge one. Also, if we look into the books, did Disney really pay everything they should have been paying? And are they going to continue to pay everything they should be paying? Once again, you need evidence to find that, but if any of those violations were there, 198.40, you've got failure to pay tax, and you've got individuals, including folks of the former Reedy Creek, that might be, or let's say risk, a felony of the third degree. Iger keeps saying Reedy Creek was Disney and Disney was Reedy Creek, and their lawyers are insisting upon this. If that's true, well then they have a huge risk of violating 839.05, which means that anybody who's working for any incorporated city or town, which by the way, there's 2 cities or towns within Reedy Creek, Bay Lake and Buena Vista, you cannot directly or indirectly speculate in any other evidence of indebtedness or script belonging to the municipal corporation. Well, if Disney is Reedy Creek and Reedy Creek is Disney, then none of those people can own Disney stock or script. If they're the same thing, then they're violating this statute. Misappropriation of public funds. Any person who knowingly obtains, uses, or endeavors to obtain and use taxes collected pursuant to this statute, or rather this chapter, with the intent either temporarily or permanently to deprive the state of a right to funds or appropriate the funds for its own use, commits theft of state funds. If it's over $100,000, which, by the way, if we're talking about bonds, yeah, it's way over $100,000, the offense is a felony of the first degree. So we're talking about a first degree felony. Once again, life in prison. Any use of taxes that is that large, for example, if we're supposed to take those bonds that were supposed to be taxable, right? And you didn't collect those taxes, and you're misappropriating them, you're depriving the state of the benefit of that tax revenue. Looking back at Reedy Creek's books, are their books clean? Are their books really showing that Reedy Creek was using that money how they should use it? Or was Disney misusing that money? Something that we'll need to explore, and definitely a risk.
Remember this here, this angled Route 4, and that's basically the outline of Disney World. So how did they do it? Disney's key contact was the consummate cloak and dagger operator, William Wild Bill Donovan, sometimes called the father of the CIA. He was also the founding partner of Donovan, Leisure, Newton, and Irvine, a New York law firm whose attorneys included future CIA Director William Casey. The father of the CIA, who's also got a law firm, Donovan's attorney provided fake identities for Disney agents. They also set up secret communications center and orchestrated a disinformation campaign. In order to maintain control over the overall development, Disney and his advisors realized the company would have to find a way to limit the voting power of the private residents, even though they acknowledged their efforts violated the Equal Protection Clause of the U.S. Constitution. Here again, the CIA was there to help. Disney's principal legal strategist for Florida was a senior clandestine operative named Paul Helliwell. Having helped launch the CIA secret war in Indochina, Helliwell relocated to Miami in 1960 in order to coordinate dirty tricks against Castro. At a secret seminar Disney convened in May 1965, Helliwell came up with the approach that to this day allows Disney organization to avoid taxation and environmental regulation, as well as maintain immunity from the U.S. Constitution. It was the same strategy the CIA pursued in foreign countries. Set up puppet government, then use that regime to do your bidding. Okay, again, Disney World, not land in California. Disney World in Florida is a sovereign state, like Washington, D.C. They do not belong to the Constitution, do not belong to the United States of America. They are in North America. They are their own government, their own tax, their own municipalities, their own power, their own everything. It is separate from Florida and the United States. Though no one lived there, Helliwell advised Disney to establish at least 2 phantom cities, then use these fake governments to control land use and make sure the public monies the theme park generated stayed in Disney's private hands, not going to the state, not going to other people, not going to the federal tax. On paper, Disney World's cities would be regular American hometowns, except their only official residents would be the handful of hand-picked Disney loyalists who periodically elected the officials who, in turn, ceded complete control to Disney executives. In early 1967, the Florida legislature created Helliwell's 2 cities, both named for the artificial reservoirs Disney engineers created by obstructing the area's natural water flow. When you visit Disney's Magic Kingdom, you are visiting the city of Bay Lake, Florida. Okay, it's not what most people think that's Orlando or Kissimmee. It's Bay Lake, Florida. The other was the city of Lake Buena Vista. In both cities, in violation of both the U.S. and Florida constitutions, the Disney engineered legislation established a property qualification for holding elective office, requiring that each candidate for office there must be the owner, either directly or as a trustee, of real property situated in the city, in order to be eligible to hold the office of councilman. Disney World, this is also in this book, Finding Florida, Disney World has a sovereign state that is not only in violation, but is not a part of the U.S. or Florida Constitution. It's its own separate entity, its own government, its own corporation, its own tax, benefit, rule, everything. Now, do you think that Disney was foolish, didn't know what he was doing, wasn't conniving and manipulating, wasn't doing things to his favor. Now granted, you're a big time businessman, you're wealthy, it may sound interesting, but we all know that you shouldn't be able to be your own sovereign state within the continental United States. We're all should be under the same banner, under the same rule. We're not. Washington, D.C. and Disney World are both separate sovereign states, not parts of the United States. Know that. As I mentioned, you have Bay Lake and Lake Buena Vista. You see this angled route here? Route 4 that I showed you earlier. And then this other one, 27. Now, to just give you a general idea of the scope of this, if you follow this kind of triangular, okay, comes up here, and it's going along here, 27. I'm really zoomed out. You see this massive amount of area here. In this general area of where 27 and 4 intersect, Champions Gate is where the original Welcome to Disney sign is. You see intersecting 4 and 27 is Ronald Reagan Parkway. Now, I'm not trying to drag Ronald Reagan into this, but you think that's a coincidence? You think they weren't friends? That there wasn't something there, that you've got Ronald Reagan Parkway going right through Disney property?
And after a few words from your sponsor, Ronnie Reagan will take it away for the dedication ceremonies to Disneyland. Street ready for the official opening ceremonies.
Don't you see when you look at Reagan? He was Disney's last wish. Don't you see that? Just before Disney died, he went, make a president.
These things aren't accidents, guys. Words, symbols, ownership, the fact that Disney has sexual references everywhere. These things are not accidents. They're not coincidences. Masters Boulevard. And as you can see, Masters is a very major boulevard that goes from basically the old gate. And by the way, all I searched was Disney World. I'm just showing you that the massiveness. Disney. And this is all a sovereign state that has nothing to do with the state of Florida or the United States of America. Now, Lake Buena Vista, that's this area. That's the second of the phantom cities that were constructed. And this was done on purpose to help gain and maintain the control of the sovereign state. So you've got the Disney Springs, the Port Orange Resort, there's quite a bit here, Sarasota Springs, Hilton, Typhoon Lagoon, and here's Bay Lake. You see that they're really next to each other, that they literally border each other. The Magic Kingdom, the castle is here, Epcot, Animal Kingdom. This is the Disney World that everyone knows. Yet, you see, here's the 4, here's the 27, here's that big triangle. That's Disney World. That's the sovereign state. That's the 27,000 acres. And here's the Disney that pretty much everyone knows. Look at all these Disney shenanigans. All this money. And I'm not mad, they have a business, they have made beautiful content that I'm endeared to throughout all my life. I'm not a Disney hater, I'm not here to burn down Disney, but I sure am going to point out and open your eyes as to what's going on. This is the Reedy Industrial Park, known as Disney World, which is a sovereign state in Florida within the United States. The Magic Kingdom, again, within Bay Lake, the Disney that we all know. I mean, just look at this massive, just building this, just this ring here. The amount of time and money planning, okay, and Cinderella's castle. Keep in mind that this castle is kind of the centerpiece of Disney World. It always has been, in particular, the old Bay Lake. This is the symbol, maybe other than the Mickey ears, this castle is the symbol of Disney. What I want to point out here is not only is she the center and it's massive, but notice that the castle is on water. So not only is this a sovereign state that is not part of Florida, not part of the United States, it's its own government, its own tax and rules and laws, but The centerpiece, and it's not the only thing on water, but the centerpiece of this insanity is the Princess Castle, Cinderella Castle, and it's on water. Now, I'm not going to get much on what that means, but what it indicates is that the castle and many parts of Disney are not only within a sovereign state, but they are under maritime admiralty law. There's a difference between the law of the land and the law of the sea. Things that are on land and things that are on water fall under different jurisdictions and different laws. And the castle is on water, so therefore it is under maritime admiralty law, not the law of the United States land. If you want to learn about maritime admiralty, there's an excellent video here that totally explains it and breaks it down. You can also find it by searching True Hemp Clothing International or THCINT. That will bring you to the channel. Okay, you see the logo there. This video is excellent, and it will teach you why it matters that the castle, and so many things in Disney World, remember that this was built on marshes and wetlands. Look at all the water that's surrounding this. These are not accidents, guys. This is not mistakes. The wealthy, the powerful do not make coincidences and accidents. They know what they're doing. They know why they buy land and what they build and why and how. And this castle is under maritime admiralty.
Disney employees walked off the job last week because they felt that Disney did not do enough to oppose a bill that passed in Florida. It's HB House Bill 1557. And what that bill does, because it has been signed by Governor DeSantis, is it prohibits teachers from providing instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity to children between the ages of kindergarten and third grade.
We are expanding the call of what they are going to be considering this week. And so, yes, they will be considering the congressional map, but they also will be considering termination of all special districts that were enacted in Florida prior to 1968, and that includes the Reedy Creek Improvement District.
All right, that might seem like a mouthful, but that is Governor DeSantis going after Disney and the special exemptions and autonomy it has taken advantage of and enjoyed for the better part right now of what, almost 60 years right now. Disney can essentially control its own zoning, has its own police and fire departments. This is a battle of gargantuan players, obviously. Disney, a major employer in your state, but what if they decide to play hardball? What do you think, and where do you think this goes?
Really, Neil, playing hardball isn't what's at question here. This is about what's doing right for Floridians. And so when the governor included the issue of the districts as part of the discussions that they will be having this week during special session, it's about leveling the playing field. No other private corporation has the benefits of operating as its own governmental body. Imagine being spared the horrors of having to deal with the county's building department, trying to get a permit every time you're going to add to your parks. And so they've operated under this district with really very special privileges that no other private corporation has. And so the governor and many members of the legislature have questioned why Disney has that special privilege compared to, say, for example, Universal Studios. And so this is going to be a policy discussion, and it really is nothing more than that.
Well, it wasn't questioned before the company expressed concern about this parental rights and education bill, the so-called Don't Say Gay law, and that opposition not come up, none of this would be happening, right?
When Disney decided to engage in what we were trying to accomplish, empowering parents and making sure that kids at a very young age, we're talking kindergartners to third graders, were not going to be indoctrinated, sexualizing topics, gender identity, all of those things that I think the vast majority of parents believe should not be taught in the classroom. Disney obviously reared its ugly head. They decided to engage in this back and forth, and then they doubled down and they said on top of that they were going to work actively to repeal the legislation. And so many members of the legislature were the first ones to question why is Disney allowed to operate without any consideration for what other companies have to follow in terms of rules, regulations, and things of that nature.
The other bill will be dealing with a handful of what are called these special districts that were done prior to the ratification of our Constitution in 1968. And one of those districts is, unlike anything else that we know in the state of Florida, that was called Reedy Creek Improvement District. It actually gave Walt Disney Company their own government in Central Florida. And so they control, they're self-governing. They have the ability to build a nuclear power plant without state consent if they want. They don't have to go through permitting. They have all kind of different benefits. And it was really an aberration. No individual or no company in Florida is treated this way. And it's not right to have dissimilar treatment, but you know, they had exercised a lot of power over the years. It was never anything that was debated. But you know, you did have the situation with our Parents' Rights in Education bill. For whatever reason, Disney got on that bandwagon. They demagogued the bill, they lied about it, whatever, came out against it. I think it's interesting that you're getting involved in Florida protecting kindergartners from going to school without having transgender ideology in their curriculum. But you don't say anything about the Communist Party of China with all the atrocities they're committing, and you're making a fortune with them. You don't say things about other countries and their practices.
Over the past several months, Disney has been desperate to stop the backlash for the live-action race-swap Little Mermaid. But it looks like today they may have stepped in it. As much as they want to promote identity politics, promote diversity and representation, when it comes to promoting it in another country, typically they don't go that route. Typically, they decide to cover up anything and everything they can for a little bit more money. This is the primary Little Mermaid poster that's been going out everywhere when people are talking about China, when it comes to the Chinese box office. And people have noticed something when it comes to Ariel. When you look at this, the way it's been designed, it's almost like they tried to saturate it with this blue light and all these things to make Ariel look as blue as possible and not show off the fact that Ariel has been race swapped, that Ariel is actually black. If you wonder, why would people just assume that that's what's happening? Well, Disney has a little bit of a history. Do you remember Force Awakens with John Boyega? This was the poster that went out everywhere else. This was the poster for China, shrinking John Boyega's character Finn because he's black. What else? Oh, that's right, Black Panther for America and everywhere else versus in China. They tried to cover up his face.
Disney company says that they got paid 4 times the minimum wage.
Disney compagnie dit yo paye employé 4 fois de plus de minimum wage. Non.
So you made
combien quoi vous touchez par jour? I'm only make 36 good a day.
This is typical of a Disney's workers' home. It's 8 foot by 10 foot. There's no water. The toilet's a hole in the ground that 10 families share. On the wages that this woman earns, she can't afford to purchase milk or medicines for her children. The kids are raised on coffee and sugar water.
We'd like to ask this woman who makes the Disney clothing, how does she live on 28 cents now? Does she live well on 28 cents?
$2.20 a day, it's not good at all for us. When we do get paid, the money is already spent. We are always in debt. I have to borrow money to pay the school and also to feed the children. I have to pay interest on the money borrowed 3 times a month. I can never pay off the debt. On the day I get paid, the children still go to bed hungry.
Tonight, what will I eat tonight?
I don't know. Since this morning, I haven't eaten. I have nothing to feed my family.
A totally disastrous attitude, especially from a company like Walt Disney that makes their living and has made their living on children, and very fortunate children. We pay dearly to support their amusement parks and their theme parks, and their products and their services are overcharged.
They say, we are going to work to repeal parents' rights in Florida. And I'm just thinking to myself, you're a corporation based in Burbank, California, and you're going to marshal your economic might to attack the parents of my state? We view that as a provocation, and we're going to fight back against that. If none of that had happened, this is the right thing to do, just on the basis of those Zoom videos. These are videos of very high up people in this corporation in Disney, and they're talking about their intentional agenda to inject sexuality in the programming that's provided to our youngest kids, kids of my age, 5, 4, and 2. They want that as part of Disney programming.
Our leadership over there has been so welcoming to my not at all secret gay agenda. And so I feel like I felt like it was, maybe it was that way in the past, but I guess something must have happened in the last, they are turning it around, they're going hard. And then all that like momentum that I felt, like that sense of I don't have to be afraid to like, let's have these two characters kiss. Let's in the background, like I was just wherever I could, just basically adding queerness to like if you see anything queer in the show, I'm proud of them. But like I just was like, no one would stop me and no one was trying to stop me. The things that we believe that we're trying to put into the shows are not what we're seeing in the real world.
No, we're trying to put it in the shows. It's not the stuff we're seeing, but it's the stuff we're trying to put in the show. Again, this is all about a group of adults who are attempting to pervert the minds of children in order to make themselves feel better.
And they have the freedom, I guess, to do what they want. But as a parent, I was very shaken by hearing that, because it's one thing to talk about legislation, and yes, they were wrong, yes, they did all that, but when you're talking about these acknowledgments and really the glee that these people had in these videos, that they were going to get this stuff in, they were talking about concepts like pansexualism. I thought to myself, I don't know what that means, but I know I don't want my 5-year-old daughter to be taught it. And so it's really, really problematic that when a company had been so synonymous with parents of young children, to yes, come out against the Parents' Rights Bill, but then to have those videos produced where they're doing that. And you know, I'm just not comfortable having that type of agenda get special treatment in my state. Now, people will say they do have services, utilities. We're going to take care of all that. Don't worry. This is all, we have everything thought out. Don't let anyone tell you that somehow Disney's going to get a tax cut out of this. They're going to pay more taxes as a result of it. We really need to get away from this type of treatment that was really unlike anything we've ever seen.
All of you know we made the decision last year to go in a different direction with respect to how Disney is governed. And since the 1960s, they've enjoyed privileges unlike any company or individual in the state of Florida has ever enjoyed. They, of course, controlled their own government right here in Central Florida. They had exemptions from laws that everybody else had to follow, and they were able to get huge amounts of benefits without paying their fair share of taxes, and even racked up $700 million worth of municipal debt. So we had a little bit of a tussle last year over school legislation, and Disney came out against something that was really just about protecting young kids and making sure that students are able to go to school learning to read, write, add, and subtract, and not having a teacher tell them that they can change their gender. And I think most parents agree with that. But you know, that was only a mild annoyance. I think that what we came to realize after that dust settled on that was you clearly had a movement within the corporation itself, of course, Burbank, California-based elements of it, that said it's their job or it's their goal to inject a lot of this sexuality into the programming for young kids. And I'm a dad, 6'4" and 2, and my wife and I know parents throughout Florida, we want our kids to be kids. We want them to be able to enjoy entertainment, school, without having an agenda imposed upon them. And so if you're going that way as a corporation, those are not the values that we want to promote in the state of Florida. We want to promote the safety of our students and the rights of our parents. So we had this situation here that was basically indefensible from a policy perspective. How do you give one theme park its own government and then treat all the other theme parks differently? And so we believe that that was not good policy. We believe being joined at the hip with this one California-based company was not something that was justifiable or sustainable. And so we said we're going to do something about it. And so now we're basically, Disney's going to be treated like SeaWorld is treated or like any of these others, and that's really the fair thing to do. So I'll be signing the bill momentarily, and that will officially end the self-governing status here in Central Florida for Disney. My signature will also end Disney's exemption from the Florida Building Code and Florida Fire Prevention Code. It will end Disney's exemption from state regulatory reviews and approval. It will end Disney's secrecy by finally ensuring transparency about what goes on in this area. It will ensure that Disney pays its fair share of taxes. It will prevent local governments dominated by leftist politicians from using this situation to raise local taxes. Remember when we first said that we were going to go in a different direction and change the status quo, local politicians, particularly in Orange County, were saying that that would mean that the debt of Disney would get dumped on their taxpayers, they would have to do services, and it would cause major property tax increases for people in Central Florida. Now, I rejected that. A lot of media reported that that would happen, and I said that will not happen. And so even though, and I'll announce here who's going to be running Disney on behalf of the state, even though I would like eventually the local governments to just take this, I was not going to put taxpayers at risk, and I did not trust them to be able to handle this at this point. So it's under state control, not local control. They may be able to negotiate something in the future, but right now there will be no additional tax burden on any Floridian in Central Florida or otherwise. And in fact, for the whole decades that this has been in effect, you have infrastructure feeding into the theme parks that were paid for by all the citizens of Central Florida, and Disney really got a free ride on that. Now they can be taxed for that, so if anything, it's going to reduce the tax burden of people in Central Florida. It also imposes, my signature in this bill will also impose Florida law on this area, just like it's imposed on Universal Studios and SeaWorld and all these other places, and this bill and the structure that we've created in this bill will ensure that the municipal debt that's been racked up will be paid by Disney, not by Florida taxpayers. And so this is what accountability looks like. So Disney loses self-governing status. The state of Florida is the new sheriff in town. But, I got a lot on my plate. I can't be running this, from the governor's office. So we've created a state control board that is going to be responsible for governing this area.
My name is John Shirey. I'm the president of the Reedy Creek Professional Firefighters. And I just wanted to speak briefly about why the signing of this bill today is of such great importance to the 200 firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, 911 communicators, and fire prevention personnel here at the Reedy Creek Fire Department. For many years, there has been a blatant disregard and a bias against the first responders here. The lack of concern for public safety has been very apparent by the Reedy Creek administration and this current board of supervisors. This bias has created major public safety shortcomings. In the past 2 years, we have faced major shortages of firefighter paramedics as well as ambulances, which oftentimes led to major delays in responding to emergency calls. Across the district in the fire department, on any given day, we do not have the bare minimum number of firefighters recommended by the National Fire Protection Association to respond to a structure fire in the majority of our response areas. Our emergency vehicles like fire trucks and ambulances are in disrepair. Oftentimes, we can't even put the bare minimum number of fire apparatus on the roads to respond to emergencies. While these things continue to occur, the district's communication director misleads the public with inaccurate statements about our emergency vehicle readiness, the adequacy of the number of first responders on property, as well as our overall emergency services capabilities. And while that goes on, the current district administrator boasts about the fact that he was able to roll over $30+ million from a single year's budget alone. It would seem that keeping Disney's money in the district's bank accounts has become more of a priority than protecting and adequately equipping the fire department to respond to the calls and protect the guests and property here at Disney.
The monorail has been shuttling people from the Central hotels to Magic Kingdom and Epcot since the resort's opening. In 1985, one car burst into flames while leaving the Epcot station, and passengers were forced to kick out the side windows and climb onto the roof. 7 passengers were taken to the hospital for smoke inhalation. It was in 2009 when the monorail had its darkest day. The busy monorail lines rely on track switching seamlessly to avoid collisions, but on July 5th, this failed to happen. As a result, Monorail Pink slammed directly into Monorail Purple at the transportation hub, killing the pilot of Monorail Purple instantly.
A boat on Disney's popular Splash Mountain ride took on water Sunday, forcing riders to climb out on their own as that water started rising. This video, recorded by Disney guest Skylar Ingersoll, shows the boat she was in taking on water as it approached the station where riders get off.
It's about listening with your imagination.
As a parent who no longer trusts Disney, my name is Mandy Schaefer, and I have called Florida home for 41 years, living in Osceola County for 37 years. I grew up going to Disney from a young girl. Throughout my adolescent years, going to Disney was just a part of my life growing up in this area. Even after I married my husband, visiting the Disney parks was a normal occurrence for us and our son when he was born. Once Disney closed the parks down because of the pandemic, our family decided we were going to opt out of keeping our passes. There were too many rules about face masks, and then being told when we needed to make reservations to use our annual passes just seemed too restrictive for us. That was the first step in our divorce from Disney. Disney, through the years, was always wholesome entertainment for the entire family. I felt safe exposing my child to Disney's content without fear of evil programming. Then something happened. We became aware that Disney content was changing by including and promoting more and more immorality. Disney no longer withstood the moral decline of the culture, but became a purveyor of that decline. I simply don't want Disney, which I once trusted, to teach my child or any children to be comfortable with or to participate in immorality. Then the Parental Rights and Education Bill was passed by the state legislature and signed by the governor. Disney decided to come out in opposition to the bill. They chose the wrong side of the moral argument. And that was the icing on the cake for our family. As a parent, I looked to Disney to entertain my family and to provide the opportunity for us to make memories together, not to speak out in opposition to a bill designed to reinforce the fundamental rights of parents to make decisions regarding the upbringing and control of their children. As a parent, I can no longer trust Disney. Education is my job. Entertainment should be Disney's. They have crossed a line when it comes to our children, and I will no longer help to fund their organization. Our first step was to cancel our annual passes. After the opposition To HB 1557, we canceled our Disney Plus as well as anything Disney does. As a family, we have chosen to purpose the resources God has given us to other avenues. Disney has stepped into a ring with mama bears, and that is not a fight they will win.
The Walt Disney Company is now suing Governor Ron DeSantis. Now, the suit was announced moments after a panel of DeSantis allies voted to invalidate Disney's control over its own self-governing district. Disney claims DeSantis has launched a, quote, targeted campaign of government retaliation.
In just the last few months, there was a new board appointed by DeSantis, but it turns out that Disney had come into an agreement with the previous board to maintain control. Today, the DeSantis-appointed board voted to nullify that, and that is what brought in this lawsuit. Again, Disney alleging government retaliation. Now, Tom, we are just getting a response from the office of Governor Ron DeSantis, who says, quote, "We are unaware of any legal right that a company has to operate its own government or maintain special privileges not held by any other businesses in the state. This lawsuit is yet another unfortunate example of their hope to undermine the will of the Florida voters and operate outside the bounds of the law."
Florida Statute 839.13. So if any judge, justice, mayor, alderman, clerk, sheriff, coroner, or other public officer, or employee or agent of, or contractor with a public agency, or any person whatsoever shall steal, embezzle, alter, corruptly withdraw, falsify, or avoid any record, process, charter, gift, grant, conveyance, or contract, or any paper filed in a judicial proceeding in any court of the state, or shall knowingly discharge, conceal, forfeit, or other forfeiture, or other paper above mentioned, or shall forge, deface, or falsify any document or instrument recorded or filed in any court or registry, acknowledgement certificate, or fraudulently alter, deface, or falsify minutes. That's meeting minutes for government meetings, by the way. Books, documents, or proceedings whatsoever belonging to any public office within this state. Yeah, they're guilty of a misdemeanor of the first degree. We're talking the bond documents. So any of those disclosures in the bond documents, those were all recorded. Then you remember those restrictive covenants they put in there? Remember those 11th hour documents? Yeah, if they falsified anything there was anything that they put in there they knew was not true. Yeah, there you go. If they had any minutes that they changed, anything that they altered, right? In Reedy Creek, any of those Reedy Creek documents. There you go. Also, mind you, who's at stake here? Remember, the Disney Chief Counsel was a contractor for Reedy Creek. Therefore, these duties attached to them. So if they in any way changed any of those documents in a false manner or fraudulent manner or altered them, could be problems. It's a huge risk. If you knowingly or willfully falsify or conceal material fact, make a false, fictitious, fraudulent statement, or make or use any false document, knowing containing any false, fictitious, or fraudulent statement or entry. And that's a felony of a third degree, much like the last one. So you can view these two, this one and the former criminal charge, as very similar. But once again, two separate options in the Rolodex of the state attorney when they're looking at this and investigating this, to go ahead and say, did Disney make any false disclosures, either on the government side or on the business side? Because this comes in and hits them on the business side. An unlawful filing of false documents or records against real or personal property. Now remember, real property is land, it's real estate, right? And those restrictive covenants, those development agreements, yeah, they were recorded against real property. So look what it says here. Any person who files or directs to file with the intent to defraud or harass another, any instrument containing materially false, fictitious, or fraudulent statements or representations that purports to affect an owner's interest in property, commits a felony of the third degree. Anybody who is impacted, any individual person, which by the way includes businesses, because Citizens United, businesses are people, and under the statutory definition, person includes entities, right? So anybody, including businesses, that have been affected by those things that were recorded, right? So by that development agreement, by those restrictive covenants, meaning any business that was within Reedy Creek, all those other businesses, yeah, they all have a civil cause of action without regard to whether criminal charges are pursued. So literally, all of those entities, all those people, they can sue civilly. Under 1, it says the court shall determine whether an entire instrument is null and void ab initio. If it is declared void, it is removed from the database and here's the important thing, the court may enjoin the defendant from filing anything in the official records without a court order. So there's 2 things here that are massive that I think Disney is going to just get absolutely blown out of the water if they're ever charged with these crimes. Number 1, Walt Disney World, imagine this, could not file routine real estate documents, which they are filing all the time, regularly, day to day, without a court order. That would absolutely hamstring them. That would be a compliance nightmare. The second part is, and this is the important part of this statute, the court shall determine whether it's void ab initio. So there was a motion that Disney made saying, oh, well, because the state legislature voided the development agreement, there's no reason for there to be a state case. But this statute shows there's a reason for the state case. This means that they need the court to have this case. They need the state case. The state case must happen in order for it to be declared void ab initio, because there's these other things that the court may end up doing, like enjoining Disney from recording further documents. Next, we have withholding records from successor. This is another criminal charge and another criminal risk. The Attorney General in Florida is already investigating the records issues with Disney and Reedy Creek. They're looking into whether or not Reedy Creek turned over all its documents, because it's looking like there's some missing documents and emails and text messages and other things that were not turned over to the CFTOD, to the new district. And anybody who willfully withholds records, papers, documents, or writings, well, guess what? If you mutilate, destroy, take away, or otherwise prevent the complete possession by successors, you're guilty of a second-degree misdemeanor.
This announcement comes just 5 days after Disney sued the governor and his replacement board, which is now in charge of overseeing development and maintenance of Disney World property. Earlier this evening, the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District filed a suit alleging the former Reedy Creek board failed to file proper notice of a public meeting in February before approving an agreement to give Disney sole control of developing its property. The tourism district also alleges Reedy Creek had no authority to assign development rights. And finally, it claims as a result that agreements between Disney and its former board are null and void. The lawsuit in circuit court in Orange County follows this morning's special meeting of the Tourism Oversight Board. It counters Disney's federal court lawsuit filed last Wednesday. In its claim, Disney alleges its constitutional rights were violated by Governor Ron DeSantis and the board that replaced Reedy Creek.
Disney and Bob Iger have continued to dig themselves in deeper and deeper and deeper, as now they're embroiled in 2 separate lawsuits with the state of Florida, particularly with DeSantis and the DeSantis appointed district, the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, which is the successor to Reedy Creek. And in this battle between Disney and DeSantis, what they don't realize they're digging in on is potential criminal charges.
Disney amending its lawsuit to include the latest comments from Governor DeSantis, and basically they are attempting to further add to that narrative that DeSantis's moves are in direct retaliation against Disney over the company's stance to Florida's Parental Rights and Education Act, otherwise known as the Don't Say Gay law, and that infringes upon its free speech. That is what Disney is trying to claim.
On an earnings call Wednesday afternoon, an investor asked Walt Disney Company CEO Bob Iger about the back and forth with Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida.
It seems like you're stuck with this fight. So how should investors think about the risk, both to the near-term and long-term business for Disney?
Regarding Florida, I got a few things I want to say about that.
Iger said they never imagined defending their business interest in federal court, pointing to the recent lawsuit against Governor Ron DeSantis.
This is about one thing and one thing only, and that's retaliating against us for taking a position about pending legislation. And we believe that in us taking that position, we are merely exercising our right to free speech.
Former CEO Bob Chapek, current CFO Christine McCarthy, and former entertainment chief Kareem Daniel are listed as defendants in a new lawsuit filed against the Walt Disney Company. The filing states these executives, quote, repeatedly misled investors about the success of the Disney Plus platform by concealing the true costs of the platform, concealing the expense and difficulty of maintaining robust Disney Plus subscriber growth, and claiming that the platform was on track to achieve profitability. The lawsuit is a securities class action on behalf of all purchasers of the Disney common stock between December 10th of 2020 and November 8th of 2022. The lawsuit goes on to claim the October 2020 restructuring of the Walt Disney Company was a dramatic departure from Disney's historical reporting structure. The lawsuit also states the restructuring was hugely controversial within the company because it took power away from creative content-focused executives and centralized it in a new reporting group led by defendant Daniel, who reported directly to defendant Chapek.
Walt Disney Company cancels relocation of thousands of California workers to Orlando's Lake Nona. Well, when you really look into it, this is just another case of Disney desperately trying to save money and trying to spin it in their favor. This thing was never getting off the ground. Disney was ready to pull the plug on this thing months and months and months ago, before these lawsuits, before all of this. But Bob Iger wanted to try to frame it as punishment for Florida, when in reality, this is the result of a company that is bleeding right now and is desperate to save money in every way they can. They're cutting costs all across the board. The Walt Disney Company has revoked a $1 billion plan to establish a new office complex in Orlando. It would reportedly have brought more than 2,000 jobs to the Orlando area situated close to Walt Disney World. You remember this, when they decided that they were going to close one of their offices in California, relocate everyone to Florida? This is back in November. People were speculating that it wouldn't happen. It was unpopular. The employees didn't want to go. It was going to cost a ton of money, and it wasn't probably going to happen until around 2026. Yet everybody in the mainstream media tried to cheer this on as some sort of win for Disney over the state of Florida. DeSantis' office responded, saying the possibility of the project was brought up 2 years ago and nothing ever came of it. The state was unsure whether it would come to fruition. Given the company's financial straits, falling market cap, and declining stock price, it's unsurprising they would restructure their business operations and cancel unsuccessful ventures. You look at the stock price for Disney, fell 44% in 2022, their worst year in half a century. You look at what's going on in Disney Plus right now. Not only are they losing hundreds of millions of dollars to billions of dollars each and every quarter, but they're bleeding subscribers. 4 million subscribers gone. As a result, they're moving a bunch of things. They're removing a bunch of content. Just happened the other day in an effort to save money. What else do we have? That's right, the Disney bloodbath. They're in the middle of laying off thousands and thousands of employees. They're on a hiring freeze. Yet you're trying to pretend like this wasn't actually just another cost-cutting measure.
We fight the woke in the legislatures. We fight the woke in the schools. We fight the woke in the corporations. We refuse to surrender to the woke mob. This state is where woke goes to die. Now, this woke mind virus represents a war on merit, a war on achievement. It represents a form of cultural Marxism. It seeks to use identity politics to divide us as Americans, but perhaps most of all, woke represents a war on truth. And because woke represents a war on the truth, we must wage a war on the woke. It is wrong for a teacher to tell a second grader that they may have been born in the wrong body, or that their gender is a choice. And in Florida, we've made sure that that is not allowed to happen. We are not allowing gender ideology in our curriculum. And if that means we got to take on Disney to do it, then so be it.
There hasn't been a lot to feel good about over the past several years at Disney Lucasfilm, but certainly this week was a nightmare for them. When you look at the news they got with Star Wars, the Galactic Starcruiser Hotel, hundreds of millions of dollars invested in this thing, all down the drain. It's shutting down. It's a complete and total failure, just like we said from the beginning. And then, of course, they debuted Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny at the Cannes Film Festival. That didn't go very well. The lowest lowest rated Indiana Jones movie of all time. The critics even are saying it's too woke for us. And then, of course, you had Willow getting pulled down from Disney. Lots of bad news surrounding Lucasfilm.
More information has been leaked regarding Epic Universe, the newest expansion that Universal plans in Orlando. And guys, it is going to be absolutely massive. This huge addition in Orlando, specifically in the city of Orlando in Orange County, right next to the Orlando Convention Center, the Orange County Convention Center, and right next to iDrive, is going to be the biggest thing in the region that we're going to see for a very long time. And it is going to be development and theme park done right and in cooperation with local government, with state government, with private business, cooperating with other business entities to do it right and to make sure it has a net positive effect on everybody surrounding that area and on Floridians. They're going to create a special district. So people are all thinking Reedy Creek, right? No, it's not going to be Reedy Creek. It's going to be Reedy Creek done right. It's going to be a different type of special district, which will work perfectly synchronize business interests, government interests, and merge them together into properly done development in Florida. You've got a fantastic Beasts area, which will be a new Harry Potter expansion, which will have some quick service and full service restaurants. You're gonna have some theater shows, attractions, a dark ride. You're gonna have How to Train Your Dragon. You're gonna have a ride for that one, a Skyfly ride, a boat ride, a play area. You're gonna have Super Nintendo World. It's right near the city of Orlando, so you can go easily into the city of Orlando, and even more easily, you can go to the Orlando airport. And one exciting thing about this project is they're gonna make it even easier. They're coming up with a way to make it even easier for you to get from Orlando Airport to over here to the Convention Center and to the Universal attractions, and also to Miami and to other areas in Florida. And that is to create a new district to plan, finance, and own the new rail station. And this is going to be in cooperation with the airport, with the Convention Center, and with Universal and the county. So this is something where everybody is working together. They're collaborating, like Disney was supposed to do in their industrial showcase. They were supposed to be working with other people, working with other businesses. You're going to have the Sunrail connected to this station. So people are going to go directly via train from the airport to the Convention Center. And mind you, at this exact same time, Walt Disney World has canceled their plans for a Brightline train station because Walt Disney cannot play well with others. This is going to allow people to connect with Brightline all the way to Miami. Brightline is the rail that goes down to West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami. And guys, a lot of travelers, I lived in Orlando, and actually I used to talk with a lot of people who traveled there and tourists and everything else, and they would want to go to Miami. That was their other big destination, particularly if you're coming from Europe or from Asia or Latin America. You're trying to go to Orlando and Miami when you visit Florida. You want to hit both.
We're happy, we're here, we're queer, and we're not going anywhere.
So my name's Nick. I'm one of Fairy Godmother's apprentices. I'm here to shop you around and make all your selections for the day.
You can't make this shit up.
I know that it's discerning to see all of this, but I've shown you proof time and again. And I've only scraped the surface. You could spend days, weeks, months finding all the sexual innuendos, all the racial comments, all the things that Disney's involved with. Let's see what Donald Duck has to say.
No, no. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
This is what Disney is. This is what it has become. It is heartbreaking thinking that our childhood and that our children are seeing this, that this is what they're brought up. But I want to open your eyes as to what Disney is, who Disney was, what they're up to, and why when guys like me, not my Star Wars, tell you things, it's not because we're being crybabies. It's because we know what Disney's about. And Disney isn't about respecting history or positive images and messages. It's about sex and Nazis and racism, sovereignty, its own sovereignty. They're above the law because the law doesn't pertain to them. And rather than respect the past, even their own past, they want to alter and edit and manipulate. I hope that it opens your eyes to what Disney and Disney Plus are about, why Star Wars is just completely crushed and turned upside down. Maybe now you understand, because Disney has agendas. It's not about respecting franchises. They're dismantling their own franchises, never mind Star Wars and other things. So please comment. What do you think? What do you feel? What do you know about this? Is this new to you? It is sad, but it is truth, and it's always better to know the truth. I hope that this helps illuminate the Disney situation. What would Walt and Scrooge McDuck want? Well, they would certainly want you to ask about Illuminati. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the video. May the Force be with you.
Impressive. Most impressive.